Thank you for joining me for another Quick Hits conversation. I'm Dr. Robyn. With me today, I have Doug Crowe, Glady Baradaran, and George Rotsch. And I want to ask the question, how do you decide when you should just be quiet and say nothing? Doug, can you kick us off?
Sure can. Well, decide to be quiet and being quiet are probably two different things for a lot of people. I'm thinking about the few times where I probably should have been quiet and I went ahead and blah. And so as I get older and wiser, hopefully, I'm learning that a pause, whether it's a short or a long one, always benefits you. You can always decide to be quiet when you think you're debating somebody and there's not even supposed to be a debate. I'll tell you a story in a minute about how I used the power of silence to make an extra 13 grand one day. That's kind of fun. But I think it's a matter of decision versus anytime you're emotional, probably should pause.
I agree with Doug. I would go by saying, for me, it depends on so many situations and so many factors outside and inside. However, I try after many years to have an overarching value system or guidelines that helps me decide, am I going to stay quiet or say something? One of the core ones on top is, am I going to be adding a value to that conversation or that thing? Am I adding a value or not? I'm not adding value, you stay quiet. The second was if I'm a lot emotional. If it's going to be emotional, you have to, like my mom used to say, my grandma, to roll your tongue a few times because you have to be kind. Is something that's going to come out of my mouth, is it going to be kind? Is it going to be considerate? Am I going to be compassionate in what I'm saying? That doesn't mean that what I'm saying is easy to do, because their guidelines are there, but there's so many times, again, that happens that I did talk and I was supposed to stay quiet, or I stayed quiet and I was supposed to say something.
I think long ago we were all taught when we first started our careers, because that we would write a letter to somebody, right? When we were sending memos back and forth, right? And you would shelve that memo to your drawer, into your drawer, and look at it tomorrow and see if you still felt the same way. That's the way we did it. Now, with electronic communications, you can almost do the same, and yet at the same time, when it's telling somebody what you have in mind, there's no drawer to put it in. It just sits there. And so being quiet is your only chance to rethink that, right? And I think it's wise to do often. And if we could do it more often, I think we could avoid a few of those ugly situations that happen inside families, with colleagues, and sometimes with our business clients.
I try really hard to notice my psychosomatic response, like the way my body is behaving, because if I can feel my kind of adrenaline and I'm like, then I'm like, okay, quiet, wait, hold on, and let that emotion kind of pass a minute. And then my logical brain kicks back in and I'm like, okay, now I can have a reasonable conversation. But I don't always notice. And that's one thing I teach my clients too, is what is your psychosomatic response to a situation where you should take a pause? And what does that look like for you? Because it's individual to everybody.
Increased heart rate, anxiety. There's probably a bunch of things going on there. And I've caught myself in that recently a couple of times. And it's been done, to George's point, it's about to, send a flame back. No, just wait, let the email sit for a little bit, do it a couple hours or a day later. And it usually it sounds a lot better. Yeah.
I do want to add, though, the ability to hold with a pause and not say something doesn't mean that the emotional statement that you want to make shouldn't be said. Great. Right? All we're saying is you breathe, gather your thoughts, get one more take before you let it rip. Because a lot of times letting it rip is necessary, is prudent, will lead to the outcome. An emotional response that's done the right way is not, it just needs to be timed.
I agree 100%. I would even say there are times that we have focus groups, we have employees, and we want to decide on some projects. And some people, they just roll their tongue many times, or they don't say anything because they just feel like, am I going to be trusted on what I'm saying? Is it going to come passionately, or how is it going to come out? And at the end of the meeting, they come back to me like, oh, I wanted to say this and that. So you should have said it. A lot of people, they're learning to hold on and not say anything. I feel like we have to, again, going back to the balance, how much am I going to talk and when I'm going to decide to be quiet. But as I agree with you, George, you have to talk. You have to say what you have to say. You cannot just hold on to it and not say anything. Just think about it, and it should come out coherently and in a kind way.
And aside from the emotional part, strategically, I know in negotiations that silence can make you a ton of money. I did it once when I sold a building once, and we were negotiating the price, and the guy made an offer, and I was dead silent. I didn't say a word, and it was uncomfortable for both of us. But I, you know, it's old school. Hey, the first one opens their mouth loses, whatever. And I didn't say anything for it felt like a minute, probably 30 seconds, and he dropped the price 13 grand. So it was a pretty good payday for waiting an extra 30 seconds to make the kind of money. And I watched a fellow person in a business situation where a business is being sold. This is multi-millions of dollars with like 8 people in a boardroom. And he told me before he walked in, he said, no matter what goes on here, you do not open your mouth. Okay. And there was a moment where this guy was talking about something, and the guy just sat there and stared at him. And it was like, oh my God, 8 people all waiting because he didn't say a word. It was crazy. It was a purchase. Motorola was purchasing this company. It was pretty crazy. So yeah, there's also good things.
Go ahead, George. I'm sorry.
The other situation that comes up is not when you're emotional, but when you're talking to somebody who is emotional. The weight there is strategic as well, because if they can play through that emotion, they may come off of their high down to a more reasonable point of view, and letting it roll and not saying anything. That fire will burn out a little bit, and then maybe you can control it in a lot better way. And so there's power in being silent when it's their emotion too.
The question I was going to ask is silence manipulative, and do you have to have power in the room to use it?
I wish I would have been on your previous talk of manipulation versus influence, because those are two cousins of another idea. Yeah. Manipulation is insinuating negative, but is it always?
Yeah, I don't know. That's why I asked the question.
I'll let somebody else answer.
Manipulation is fine. Just do it as often as you need to, as long as the outcome's good.
As long as both sides, they gain whatever, you're not taking advantage of other person. Again, it goes back to the human values that we have. I would say staying silent for the purpose of manipulating, I won't do it. For me. If I have to stay silent because at that moment, that's the best decision to make, because talking, it would just not gonna do anything good, or it's absolutely a lost cause, because there are some people out there that they believe that they're entitled to their opinion and their own facts. You're entitled to your opinion, but not to your own facts. So when it comes to the part that I have the facts and they're just absolutely not open to it, so staying silent, it just makes you not falling to that game and rolling and going down. Just holds you back to stay zen and in peace.
I'm not sure how avoiding a negative is manipulation.
Avoiding a negative. Well, so is silence avoiding a negative? Is that what silence is?
We're talking about the inappropriate response, right? The response we regret. And so, yes, sometimes that is. That's the negative.
Okay. But so I was thinking about in Doug's case where you're in a negotiation and you just sit there and look at them. Is that manipulation or is that human behavior, and that's the way it goes?
Well, manipulating human behavior or leveraging it is totally appropriate. I mean, he was willing to negotiate a lower price. I didn't put a gun to his head. I just was quiet.
Overpaying is a negative.
Yeah, I would say yes, it's manipulation, and I'm okay with it. Like George's like, yep, it's fine.
Interesting.
Negative.
Yeah, so I think the decision to be silent is, there's so much, like there's the emotional situation, there's the negotiation situation, I do feel like in relationships, the silent treatment is a negative manipulation that does not have any benefit. If you're not communicating with your partner because you're just mad, that's not productive either.
With the caveat that if that's their coping mechanism to like let things gel a little bit, if you know that ahead of time, then it's okay. So,
right.
You know,
if you have a
timeout
agreement.
Yeah. If I need time to sit and think, go ahead. Let me know when you're ready to talk about it. That works.
It's a timeline too, again, the factor of time. How long you staying quiet?
Yeah.
When you're going to be talking.
30 seconds is one thing, 3 days is a whole separate problem. Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree
yeah.
with
Good,
that.
bad.
There you go. Yeah, you should be able to think
All
a little
right.
faster than that.
Well, that is our 10 minutes. I thank you so much for having this conversation with me. It would have been really hard if you had all decided to be silent. I'll talk to you all again soon.